Hello everyone, welcome back to the lecture on anthropological thought series, and today we are going to take up structuralism as a thought for discussion, especially Levi-Strauss. Okay, so I know structuralism has been a pain point in your anthropological thought, and today we'll try to minimize it or take it away completely by getting the clarity over his contributions regarding methodology, and knowing his historical background and assumptions. So let's get into the topic. So he is the person whose contributions has been tremendous and has been felt even today in anthropology as the subject. So before getting there, let's understand the social structure. So before even going to the social structure, we'll see the word structuralism. Structuralism, if you see etymologically, it is made up of two words, structure and ism. So ism is generally used for ideology. So now we have already seen while studying about Radcliffe-Brown's structural functionalism, structure can be anything. We have seen a symbol of house. So for civil engineers, house is a structure, and it varies from person to person. And according to Radcliffe-Brown, what is the social structure? Social structure is nothing but the parts, right? What are the parts? According to him, in the society, humans or groups are the parts, and the interrelationship between them, and this relationship gives rise to behavior, and that behavior is controlled by institutions. That is the social structure according to Radcliffe-Brown. Okay, so the structure which we are talking about is related to the society in anthropology. Okay, so for us it is social structure. Now we will be seeing the difference between the views of Radcliffe-Brown and Levi-Strauss with respect to social structure. So there are two views, there are many views actually, but for us this is very important to understand because we have already seen the structural functionalism. So Radcliffe-Brown, what did he say with respect to structural functionalism? He says that it is the groups, their relationship, and which is controlled by institutions, okay, the behavior that is generated. Okay, so that means he is saying you can see the social structure, right? You can see it, which means it is empirical in nature, which you can see or you can observe. So social structure is visible, or he means that it is empirical. But coming to Levi-Strauss, Levi-Strauss says that social structure is an abstract, you can't see it. Social structure is an idea or abstract which you can't see it. It is in the minds of the people. So he says that social structure is mirror image. It's a mirror image of cognitive structures. So cognitive is nothing but structures in the mind. Okay, so this is the difference, basic difference with respect to Radcliffe-Brown's social structure and Levi-Strauss social structure. So Levi-Strauss social structure we will be understanding in a greater detail. Okay, so Levi-Strauss social structure he has talked about in the book Structural Anthropology. Okay, in the book Structural Anthropology, he has talked about his social structure. And where did the Radcliffe-Brown talk about it? In the structure and organization in the primitive society, right? We have seen the book where he has talked about social structure and other terms such as social system and structural form. Okay, so now you are clear with the difference between these two people. We'll get into the Levi-Strauss perspective. Okay. So now first we'll see the background of Levi-Strauss, then we'll see the assumptions, then methodology. Okay, so in today's class we'll be discussing this. Okay. So now what is the background of Levi-Strauss? He has his background from law. He has his background from law, but because of his wife Dina, who was conducting field work or ethnographic work, okay, ethnography, she was doing ethnographic work in Brazil. She was doing ethnographic work in Brazil, and what happened, suddenly she meets with an injury. Okay, so because of that injury the work gets stops in the middle, and now because of that reason Levi-Strauss was forced to take up this work, and that is how Levi-Strauss comes in contact with anthropology, and his journey in anthropology begins from here. So Levi-Strauss takes up the work and his journey in anthropology begins from here. And there was war period that was going on. So during the war period, Levi-Strauss moves from Brazil to New York. Okay, he moves to New York. There he meets a person, Jacobson. Right, and Jacobson is the head of Prague School of Linguistics. He is the head of Prague School of Linguistics. Right, and the influence of the other person is Marcel Mauss. So one more important person in the life of Levi-Strauss is Marcel Mauss, who has talked about the essay The Gift. He has written an essay known as The Gift. Okay, so he said that exchange of gift leads to the solidarity, not just between the individuals, but also groups. Okay, so why am I talking about all these people in the life of Levi-Strauss? Because when you see the methodology that he has suggested, or while he's analyzing various concepts, that analysis of kinship, analysis of myth, or analysis of totemism or taboo, so with respect to those things, you will see these people's influences in it, right? Jacobson has been a friend of Levi-Strauss for more than 20 years, and he plays a major role in the theory that has been proposed by Levi-Strauss, which we'll be looking at it. So first we have seen what is social structure, and for us in anthropology, structure is about those in the society. So we are talking about social structure with respect to structuralism, and social structure, there are differences with respect to views of Ratcliffe-Brown and Levi-Strauss, where Ratcliffe-Brown says that you can see everything in the society, it is empirical, you can observe the social structure, but whereas Levi-Strauss says that no, it's not observable, it is an idea, it is an abstract which is present in the minds of the people. Okay, so he says that social structure is mirror image of what that is present in the minds of the people. So you can't see the social structure in reality. Okay, so now what is it, we'll be seeing, but right now we have discussed so far these things. Okay, so Levi-Strauss wife Dina, she does ethnographic work which because of injury stops in the middle, and Levi-Strauss has to take it up, and that is where his interaction with respect to anthropology began. And from there he felt the influence of Jacobson, who is head of the Prague School of Linguistics, and then Marcel Mauss. Now we'll get into the premises of structuralism of Levi-Strauss. Okay, Levi-Strauss structuralism, what were the premises? Before putting out the theory, you need to have something in mind, right? So these people had influence on him. So with these things in mind, he has made certain assumptions and before giving the theory. Okay, so he made certain assumptions before giving the theory. What were his assumptions or premises? So coming to the premises, he says that first thing, every society has got a basic structure. Every society and this basic structure consists of various elements. Okay, various elements. Okay, basic structure consists of various elements and arrangement of these elements gives rise to the basic structure. So there are elements in the society and arrangement of these elements gives rise to basic structure. So he says that different societies have different structure because these elements are put in different permutations and combinations. So different permutations and combinations. What do you mean by permutations and combinations? It is nothing but arrangement. So first you have put E1, E2, E3 in one society, in some other society E2, E1, E3. So because of this difference in arrangement, there is differences in the social structure across the societies. This was his assumption. Okay, this was his assumption. First assumption is this, and next second thing is that he says that there is human tendency, general tendency of humans to think in opposites. Think in binary opposites, right? So this is the other assumptions that he has made. So what do you understand by this? Binary opposites or to think in opposites? See, suppose there is dark versus bright or light, okay, good versus bad, cooked versus raw food. So these are all the opposites. He says that human being always thinks in the opposites, and within the opposites also you can't have brightness without darkness. That means these have to exist together, which he calls as unity of opposites. Okay, there is unity of opposites and human beings everywhere thinks in a similar manner, that is in the terms of binary oppositions. So now if you observe what is he saying carefully, he says that human beings everywhere thinks in terms of binary opposites. So he says that it is a general tendency. That means he is accepting the similar way of thinking everywhere, which you can relate to evolutionism, which talks about psychic unity of mankind, similar thinking process, right? So he is considering this. That means he is accepting in some way or the other the psychic unity of mankind. Okay, so that you can relate over here, and these are the assumptions with respect to him. Okay, now he says that this basic structure, where you can see it is there in the mind. Okay, so basic structure is a replica of cognitive structures. Okay, this basic structure in the society is replica or mirror image of cognitive structures, right? So if you have to study what is there in the mind, okay, so you have to study basic structure through its models. Okay, okay, through its models. So these cognitive structures are replica of basic structure, and this you can understand through the models. According to him, if you have to understand the basic structure, you have to understand the models. What are models? Anything that are the products of mind. Models are anything that are products of mind. Okay, this is what he says. Now we'll take up the methodology. Okay, so the methodology is about he considers language as a model. He considers language as a model. What do you observe within the language? You have words, right? So suppose take any word, what you can consider. So cricket, right? So this is called phoneme, right? These words, and if you break it further, there are phones. These are phones. So if you separately use these things, it doesn't make any sense, right? So all these phones are interrelated to one another by some rules. So they are interrelated to one another by some rules. By observing carefully, you can come up with a law that how these things are arranged. Okay, so just based on the grammar rules, these are arranged, and you can come up with a common law how things are arranged by observing these things, right? He takes, why is he talking about language? Now if you can relate that Jacobson was friend of him, he was friend for 20 years, right? So that influence of Jacobson has been felt on Levi-Strauss. You can see here, he is using the methodology of language, and this language as a model he has taken it, and now he says that language and culture are not different to Levi-Strauss. He says that culture and language are the same things. If you have to understand culture and social structure, you need to understand the language. So use language as a model to understand culture and thereby understand the social structures. So if you observe what he says that, so basic structure is present in the mind. So if you have to study basic structure, you have to study models which are the product of mind. And how do you choose these models? You choose these models based on the language. So now with this he will try to understand. And next, what methodology did he employ? To understand the social structure or the models, he used language as a model. Okay, so just like language, you can understand culture through it. Okay, so now if you have to study social structure, you have to study the models, okay, which are replica of mind. So if you study the models, you'll get to understand the social structure. So how do you select the models? Okay, so what are models? Models are nothing but anything that is replica of mind. But if you have to select models, he has given certain requirements. Okay, so how do you select the models? The requirements of the models, how do you select the models? So first thing you need to understand, there is basic structure. Within the basic structure, you have models. So this basic structure is replicated in terms of social structure in the mind. Okay, if you have to understand this, you have to study this models, and these models are anything but replica of mind. So language, through which you can study totemism, okay, myth, and through the language of kinship. So through this you can understand. Okay, so using language as a model. Okay, so models are nothing but a replica of human mind. Okay, so if you have to choose something as a model, how do you do it? He gives three requirements. First requirement is that language has to be systematic. Model has to be systematic. Model has to be systematic. What do you mean by systematic? He says that if you bring a change in one part, it should affect the change in other parts. So if you bring change in one part, it should lead to the changes in other parts, which he calls as systematic. Then he says that model should be transformed. What do you mean by transformed? That means he says that you should be able to generate other models with similar sense. Okay, so model should be systematic. That means any change in one part of the model should lead to change in other parts. Second thing, he says that model should be transformed. That means he says that there should be similar kinds of models which could make sense with respect to it. Okay, so next, third thing is that it should be observable and intelligible. Observable and intelligible. That means you can see it and it should make sense, right? These were the requirements of the models. So it sounds bit abstract, but he's talking about that only, right? It is there in the minds of the people. So for that, if you have to understand, you need to understand these things very carefully. What all we have discussed so far, just we shall recall, because this thought, until and unless you connect with each and every word, you won't be understanding. So social structure, the differences which we have studied, it's well and fine. Then we have seen the historical background. Then we moved on to the assumptions. That within the assumptions we have two things. First assumption is that there are basic structures, and these basic structure consist of elements, and if you arrange them in different permutations and combinations, you get different social structures. And next thing is that human beings think in terms of binary oppositions. These were the assumptions. Then coming to the premises, premises or assumptions we are done with. Then coming to the methodology. So in order to understand the basic structure, you need to study the models, right? For studying those models, he chose language as a model in order to understand the other models. Okay, so now you have to study models. So if you have to take a model, what is the requirement of the model? So there needs to be certain criteria that has to be satisfied if you have to choose something as a model. So these are the criteria, right? Now you have understood what are models and how to choose a model, then how to study them. Okay, we have seen with respect to social structure, leading figures, what are the backgrounds of Levi-Strauss, basic premises, right, and the methodology, the requirements of the model, then moving on to the construction of models. Now we have seen, right, by studying the models we will try to understand the basic structure, but how to choose a model we have already seen. So now how are you constructing the model? So in construction of models, because we are trying to construct the model through the language, right? So whatever the things that are there, using the language we will try to construct the model. So now construction goes through two things or two steps. Construction of a model happens through two steps. One is observation, other is experimentation. Right, what happens in observation? You will try to collect all the data. Okay, so be it regarding the myth or anything that you are choosing as a model. If you have chosen something as a model, so now suppose you have taken a myth, so that means myth is used as a story that different people will be talking about it in different manner. So now when you are studying a particular myth, you will gather all the data, right? Whether you feel it's objective, what do you mean by objective, right? Whether you feel it objective or not. Sometimes you feel that certain things are not important, certain things are important, and you may ignore the unimportant part, but you don't know until and unless till the end of the experimentation is done whether the things have been important or unimportant. So without distinguishing or discriminating between important and unimportant facts, you will gather all the facts under observation. Okay, so you will gather all the facts under observation. So you will not distinguish between what is objective and subjective and important, unimportant. Without giving any notions, you will collect all the data, and this collected data is arranged. Okay, this data that you have collected under observation is arranged logically to give certain meaning, what is called as experimentation. What is observation? Collection of facts, right, which may be important or unimportant, everything that comes under observation. That is the first step. And experimentation is that this data and facts you will arrange logically so that it makes you some meaning or gives you some sense. That is the experimentation. So these are the steps that are involved in construction of a model. So now if you can see, observation, you will collect all the data, right, pertaining to the structure of the society, and next is the experimentation. So you will arrange them in a logical manner and you will come up with the logical interpretations. Now coming to the types of models. Okay, so he has talked about different types of models. Within that you have scale model and conscious models. Okay, now again under scale model you have statistical model and mechanical model. Okay, so first we look at what is mechanical model and statistical model. So scale model further divided into mechanical and statistical. So if you see mechanical one, which is ideal. Okay, so mechanical is nothing but, so when you go to some society, suppose you have went to study two different societies, one is primitive society and other is modern society. In the primitive society, the ideal and real is same. So suppose they say that they follow polygamy or they follow monogamy or whatever they say. If you see whatever they are saying, they are following it. But if you go to the industrial society, they say that monogamy has to be followed, and if two people are married, they should stay together throughout the life. But if you see in reality in the industrial societies, there are large instances of divorces, right? So you can see there. So that means the reality is different from ideal thing which they have spoken, right? So ideal phenomena relates to the mechanical model and the statistic model relates to the deviation that you have observed in the society. So it represents the real. Okay, so the model presents the existing realities in the society. That is, the phenomena is not in the same level of reality. So whatever the ideal phenomena that is there, that is not at the same level, because in the reality it is different. Here the ideal and real is same, but here the ideal and real is different in terms of statistical model. So the types of models according to Levi-Strauss involve scale model. Within that you have two models, one is mechanical model, other is statistical model. The conscious models, so based on the consciousness of the models you have two things, one is conscious and other is unconscious. Okay, so what do you mean by conscious? Conscious means the reality, how people interpret their own way of life, and unconscious means the phenomena that is not directly perceived by the people. Okay, so let me explain this through example which Levi-Strauss has used. Okay, let's take example of Bororo-Redindians in Brazil. So the Bororo-Redindians, so in Bororo-Redindians what happens, these people have a structure of moiety. Okay, so these people are divided into two moieties. So moiety is nothing but half. Okay, if you divide entire tribe into two halves, that gives rise to two moieties. So suppose there is a moiety A and moiety B, and each moiety is further divided into different classes. Okay, class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. Okay, so these people are having settlements in the east-west axis. Okay, so there are class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. So now if you ask these people, what they'll say is that they will follow marriage exogamy. So they have certain type of marriage system, that is marriage exogamy. Exogamy means you don't marry within your own group, so you will marry from other group. So they follow moiety exogamy, that means they will marry from other moiety, they don't marry within the moiety, so they will marry from other moiety. So what they will say that, if according to them what is perceived, they say that they are following marriage moiety exogamy, that means they are not marrying, they are not following any pattern of endogamy. So now if you observe carefully, there are different classes. The class 1 people are marrying from group B of class 1, class 2 people are marrying group B of class 2, and 3 from 3, 4 from 4. Okay. In reality what they think, they are following exogamy in terms of moiety, but when you look closely, they are following certain endogamy. You can see the class endogamy, right? So they are marrying from same class, they are not marrying from other classes. So what Levi-Strauss says that there are two kinds of model. One is conscious, that means people can see and what they are interpreting, but there are certain things which people are not observing, and that is there at the unconscious level, that is known as unconscious models. Okay, now I think you have got clarity about models. Models are nothing but replica of human mind. Okay, so you can choose anything as model, and model has certain requirements and there are different types. Okay, so in constructing these you have two steps, one is observation, other is experimentation. This is with respect to methodology and method of structuralism. Okay, Levi-Strauss structuralism, if you have to study something, you have to do this. Okay, now I have a request that if you want me to explain how these models or these methods are used in real terms by Levi-Strauss, suppose you will be studying about structural analysis of myth, right? So there, how did he use these things and how did he explain about the myth? So if you want to know about that, so until and unless I get around 50 requests in terms of comments, I don't think I would be taking up it, because I have seen very less response from your end, that I need enthusiasm from your end also to contribute myself. Okay, so if there would be 50 comments, then that day I'll be taking up the lecture to explain how these are explained, how these are applied in real terms by by Levi-Strauss in terms of structural analysis of kinship, myth, totemism, etc. So all those things we'll discuss then, but today we have understood these things, that first what is the historical background, what is the premises or assumptions, and then what is the methodology that he has employed in order to understand. So the methodology that he used is that language as a model, and the models that are replica of human mind, you need to construct them. So in order to construct, you need to observe and you need to experiment. So you have to arrange them logically. So how did he observe about myth, how did he observe about kinship, and how did he logically interpret it, that explanation will be based on your response, and according to that we will be taking up further. Okay, so this is with respect to the today's lecture. So let me take you through the conscious and unconscious models that I have explained about Bororo Red Indians, that their village is divided into two halves, east-west, and they follow exogamous moiety, and it is divided into 4 classes. Okay, people of one moiety marries from other moiety. This is consciously what they are thinking or what they are interpreting, but unconsciously they were marrying the same subclass. This is the endogamous part. So this is the illustration of the models that Levi-Strauss has used. So if you want to know about his contributions and how this method has been employed, okay, so there are stories about myth. Unless and until you understand a story that he has discussed or the myth that he has discussed and how he has logically interpreted, okay, how he has logically interpreted these things, you won't be able to understand it in a complete manner. So he studies myth, there is a story, right? He listens to the story, he notes down all the facts, and he logically interprets. And after that he comes out with some conclusion. So if you know the story, then you'll understand this interpretation, then you'll be able to understand how he has talked about the models and that construction of the models, and through that what is the logical interpretation by observing. Okay, so by observing these facts he has made some logical interpretations, and those logical interpretations are the contributions of Levi-Strauss in terms of myth, kinship and totemism. So if you want that, please respond. Okay, so that's all with respect to today's class. Thank you very much.